Imagine this: a brilliant mind, brimming with innovative ideas and the drive to achieve great things, yet they find themselves perpetually stuck in a cycle of procrastination, unable to take the necessary steps to realize their ambitions, putting off tasks, and engaging in avoidance behaviors, despite their incredible potential. How can someone with such strong desires also be so inherently lazy? This is not just a personal quirk, but a deeply rooted human paradox that affects countless individuals, preventing them from reaching their full potential and causing feelings of frustration and guilt, leaving many wondering why they can't get out of their own way. This internal battle between ambition and laziness is far more common than you might think, and it's not about a lack of willpower, but rather, it is a conflict that lies at the very core of our being, a puzzle that has intrigued philosophers and thinkers for centuries. Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher known for his radical and often pessimistic views on human nature, is one of the few who truly understood this contradiction. He saw intelligence not as a solution, but as a double-edged sword, and believed that our desires are inherently insatiable, driven by a relentless force he called the will to live, which shapes all of our actions, yet often leads to profound dissatisfaction. The pattern is always the same. We feel a surge of motivation, envisioning our goals, but are soon met with a dramatic drop in energy, a difficulty to start, and an overall reluctance to finish. This creates a cycle that seems almost impossible to break. Schopenhauer's unique perspective was deeply influenced by his own isolated life, his difficult relationships, and his study of Eastern thought, particularly Buddhism, which gave him a unique lens to understand human nature, one that is completely different than most traditional and optimistic views. This unconventional background is essential to understand his radical ideas about why our deepest desires can lead us down a path of procrastination and suffering. This is not just an abstract philosophical concept. It is the root of a very personal struggle. This internal conflict between ambition and the inability to take action is not just a minor inconvenience. It is a barrier that prevents many from finding true fulfillment and happiness. Understanding Schopenhauer's perspective, therefore, is not just an intellectual exercise. It is a crucial step towards self-improvement and a more fulfilling life. His ideas are not just interesting theories, but a powerful tool that can help us understand the deeper aspects of the human condition, offering insights that go far beyond surface-level observations. The conventional wisdom on motivation, which we have all been taught, may be incomplete, and Schopenhauer's philosophy offers a more profound, albeit darker, explanation, revealing that our desires are far more complex than they appear, and our motivations are not as straightforward as we might believe. In fact, it's possible that they might be inherently problematic. All of our actions are driven by the will to live, a constant, insatiable desire, and this foundation is critical to understanding how our desires shape our actions and how they create this cycle of ambition and laziness. Schopenhauer stood apart from the more optimistic philosophies of his time, arguing that our drive for success and achievement does not always equate to fulfillment. He did not see humanity as inherently good or that progress is inevitable. He had a starkly different view, believing that our desires were not just the source of our ambition, but the root of much of our suffering. This unique position in history makes him an important figure to understand our current predicament. The will to live, as Schopenhauer described it, is not something we consciously control. It is a relentless, blind force that drives all human behavior, the underlying energy that fuels our desire for recognition, achievement, and success, but also our constant wanting and craving. This constant pursuit of desires can ironically lead to laziness, creating a cycle of wanting and avoiding, as the will to live is fundamentally insatiable. The more we chase, the more we find ourselves unfulfilled, and this continuous dissatisfaction creates a resistance, an avoidance, which manifests itself as the very thing we are trying to escape. So why would the will to live make intelligent people ambitious, yet simultaneously cause them to procrastinate? Is our drive for success somehow working against us, leading to the opposite of what we seek? What is the hidden truth about this will, and why does it create this vicious cycle? Perhaps the answer lies in recognizing that our desires are not simply good or bad, but a complex mix that will be further explored in this video. What if this internal conflict holds the key to understanding our deepest nature? In the following parts of this video, we will reveal the hidden costs of the will to live and how to break free from this endless cycle of ambition and procrastination. We will explore how understanding these forces can lead to more purposeful actions and offer a path to liberation from this paradoxical conflict. The will to live, as Schopenhauer describes it, is not a conscious desire or a simple wish, but rather a blind, irrational, and ceaseless striving, a fundamental force that drives all living beings. It is the root of all human action, an internal mechanism that is always seeking to express itself, constantly pushing us forward towards something we think we desire, a powerful undercurrent that shapes everything we do. Think of a river, forever flowing, always seeking the ocean, never truly satisfied with the present moment, always compelled to move forward, never resting and constantly seeking a new course. This is the nature of the will, an incessant push, an endless striving, not for anything in particular, but simply to continue its own expression, regardless of the consequences. It is a force that operates independently of our intellect, often overriding our conscious desires and intentions, pushing us to act in ways that we might not even understand. This will is the very essence of our being, a drive so fundamental that we cannot escape its influence, shaping our ambitions, our fears, our relationships, and all our actions, creating a sense of perpetual unease and dissatisfaction that can permeate every aspect of our lives. It is this relentless internal force, this unyielding energy, that Schopenhauer argues is the source of much of our suffering. Indeed, suffering, according to Schopenhauer, is not an accidental feature of life, but rather it is an inherent part of existence, a direct consequence of the will to live. The constant striving of the will inevitably leads to dissatisfaction, to pain, because desires are inherently insatiable. We are always wanting, always craving, always chasing after something that we believe will finally bring us lasting peace. But this is simply not how the will operates. Each desire fulfilled is merely a temporary cessation of suffering, soon replaced by a new longing, a new discomfort, starting this cycle over again, in an endless loop. The feeling of relief or happiness we experience after achieving something we wanted is, according to this perspective, merely the absence of pain. The moment the will is temporarily satisfied, it immediately sets its sights on a new goal, a new craving, creating an endless cycle of want and dissatisfaction, leaving us always on the hunt for something more, something better, something that seems forever beyond our grasp. The fulfillment of one desire is not an end in itself, but rather, it is simply a trigger for the emergence of new desires, and thus, new suffering. This is the fundamental dynamic of human experience, where pleasure and satisfaction are always transient, quickly giving way to a feeling of incompleteness and dissatisfaction. This is a cycle that repeats itself endlessly, trapping us in a never-ending loop of desire and disappointment. Our desires, Schopenhauer argues, are inherently insatiable, and this is not a matter of our individual character or discipline, but rather, it's simply the nature of the will itself. Think of a time when you finally achieved a long-term goal, perhaps getting a promotion, buying a new house, or completing an important project. At first, there is that brief moment of satisfaction, of accomplishment, but how long does this feeling last? It quickly fades, often to be replaced by new goals and new anxieties, making you wonder what's next. It is in this pattern that we can observe the fundamental nature of our desires. They are like a bottomless pit, always requiring more, always leaving us wanting and never truly providing a lasting sense of contentment. For example, the desire for a new car might bring initial excitement, but that feeling soon diminishes, leading to the desire for an even better car or a new gadget, a bigger house, and so on. The same dynamic is seen with social achievements or even relationships. This is the essence of the will, and it is always setting us up for disappointment by constantly presenting an external object as if it can bring us lasting internal satisfaction. This is how the will operates, making us believe that the next thing, the next achievement, will be the one that will finally bring happiness. But this is simply not the case, as it is the will itself, not our specific circumstances, that is the root cause of our discontent. This perpetual cycle reveals the futility of chasing after external goals in hopes of finding lasting fulfillment. Ambition, from Schopenhauer's perspective, is not a sign of personal strength or exceptional drive, but rather, it is simply a manifestation of this fundamental will to live. Our desires for success, for recognition, and for achievement are all expressions of this same underlying driving force, this powerful internal current that compels us to seek more and to constantly strive for an idealized future. Whether it's the desire for wealth, for power, for fame, or for social status, these are all rooted in the same underlying drive, the ceaseless will to live. Consider the ambitious entrepreneur driven to build a successful business, or the artist striving for recognition, or the athlete pushing their limits to achieve victory. They may seem to be motivated by different things, but in reality, they are all driven by the same force, the will to live, expressing itself through different avenues, seeking to validate its own existence. The will doesn't discriminate, it simply seeks expression, no matter the form it takes, and it always sets the stage for dissatisfaction, because the goal, whatever it may be, is never enough to satisfy the will itself. It is this restless energy, this constant striving, that fuels our ambitions, but paradoxically, it is also this same force that sets the stage for our inevitable disappointment and our tendency to procrastinate, creating a seemingly unbreakable cycle. What is even more surprising is that laziness, that frustrating inability to take action, is not just a character flaw, but rather it can be seen as a form of resistance to the suffering that is inherent in the will to live. When we procrastinate, avoid tasks, or find ourselves unable to start, we are not simply being weak or undisciplined. We are actually rebelling against the inevitable pain and disappointment that is associated with the relentless pursuit of our desires. The will drives us to act, but our experience of how these pursuits end, often in disappointment, causes a natural resistance, a form of rebellion against its demands. Consider the fear of failure, of rejection, or even the plain dread of hard work. These are not irrational fears, but often a subconscious understanding of the futility of striving for goals that will, ultimately, not provide true fulfillment, so we resist. We may be aware of how achieving goals always ends up in dissatisfaction, leading to a sense of futility, creating this natural resistance. It is a way to escape, at least temporarily, the inevitable suffering associated with the pursuit of our ambitions. Laziness, then, is not simply a negative trait, but a form of rebellion against the endless cycle of desire and disappointment that we are often caught in. This is how the same force can cause both ambition and laziness. This creates a paradoxical conflict within us, between ambition, which drives us towards goals, and laziness, which holds us back, creating an internal battle that seems impossible to win. We are pulled in two different directions. On one hand, our will drives us towards achievement and success, and on the other, our understanding of the futility of these pursuits makes us want to avoid them, creating an internal conflict that manifests in our daily lives. Consider the high-achieving student who is brilliant and capable but struggles to start assignments, or the ambitious professional who has great ideas but is constantly putting off essential tasks. This is the internal battle between these two forces, each fighting for control, which is rooted in the same source, the will to live. This conflict is not a personal failing, but it is a natural consequence of our inherent nature. It is a reflection of the fundamental tension between the relentless drive of the will and the natural resistance of the human psyche against suffering, causing a constant internal battle that can be very confusing, as one part of you is pushing for a goal, but the other part of you is actively avoiding it. This internal battle can often leave us feeling lost, confused, and wondering why we are in our own way. Is there an escape from this cycle? The relentless pursuit of desires and goals often leads to disappointment because external success and achievement cannot, and will not, provide lasting happiness. We chase after things that we believe will bring us fulfillment, but we often discover that they are empty and unsatisfying, like a mirage in the desert. They appear as the answer, but once we get there, we find nothing. Consider the individual who has always dreamed of reaching the top of their profession, finally reaching this point, only to feel a sense of emptiness and a lack of purpose, realizing that their success has not brought them the happiness they thought it would. Or think of the individual who finally finds the ideal partner, but after some time realizes that that doesn't bring the satisfaction that was expected. What seems so promising from the distance quickly loses its luster once it's obtained, because the will is not satisfied with objects, and that is what we are trying to attain with our pursuits, thinking that it is that thing that we need, rather than seeing that the problem lies in the will itself. The very nature of the will to live ensures that no amount of external achievement can provide the lasting contentment we crave, because it is always seeking the next thing. It is in this realization that we begin to understand that our relentless pursuit is futile, not because we cannot reach the goal, but because the goal itself cannot provide what we seek. The idea that our external pursuits are the answer is a powerful illusion, and it is this illusion that keeps us in the endless cycle of wanting and disappointment. This is because the pattern of ambition, pursuit, temporary satisfaction, and subsequent disappointment is repetitive and self-defeating, and regardless of how many times we repeat it, we end up in the same place, and so this cycle continues indefinitely. The achievement of a long sought-after goal is often met with a brief sense of accomplishment, quickly followed by a longing for something more, something bigger, or something better, and this cycle repeats itself again and again, leaving us always chasing an ideal, yet never finding any lasting fulfillment. Consider the experience of setting and achieving a goal, such as running a marathon. The initial sense of achievement is soon replaced by thoughts of training for an even longer race, or achieving a new personal record, or chasing other goals altogether. This pattern is not specific to athletes. It is a very common human experience. From a child getting a new toy to an adult finishing a big project, it's always the same, a fleeting moment of happiness, then on to the next pursuit, highlighting how no matter how many goals we achieve, the cycle continues. The will always seek to express itself, and because it is insatiable, the goal itself becomes meaningless. It is simply the fuel that perpetuates the cycle. We become trapped in an endless loop, a continuous chase that never truly satisfies, leaving us feeling like we are always running, yet never arriving at our destination. It is in this cycle that we begin to understand that true fulfillment cannot be found through external achievements. The will to live traps us in this endless cycle of desire and disappointment, creating a feeling of constant dissatisfaction and a sense that something is always missing, that we are always running after a carrot at the end of a stick. It is not that we are not achieving our goals, it's that even when we do, the feeling of fulfillment is only temporary, immediately followed by the craving for a new experience, a new possession, a new achievement. It is a trap that is set by the will itself, and no amount of hard work or discipline can break it. It will always be in the driver's seat, pushing us to want more, and ensuring that we are never truly at peace. The will is not looking for contentment, it simply wants to express itself, and it uses our desires to do so, creating an illusion that we are in control and that our pursuits will lead to lasting happiness, when in fact they are simply an extension of the will itself. It is in this realization that we begin to grasp the limitations of our desires. This is not something that we can escape by simply working harder. It is a fundamental part of our nature, and it requires a different approach to overcome. This can feel hopeless, as if we are doomed to always feel this way, but there is a way to escape this trap. It is not in chasing our ambitions, but in creating an entirely new way of being. How can we break free from this endless cycle? Moments of transcendence, such as aesthetic contemplation or selfless acts of kindness, can offer a temporary relief from the suffering caused by the will, revealing that there is more to life than the endless pursuit of our desires, and these provide a more genuine sense of satisfaction than external pursuits. When we are immersed in nature, listening to music, or helping others, we are not driven by the will, but by a different, more profound force, escaping the need for external validation and experiencing a feeling of peace, a sense of being present, which transcends the usual cravings. Think of the experience of losing yourself in a beautiful painting, feeling a deep connection with the art, or the sense of fulfillment that comes from helping someone in need. These are moments where the will seems to recede, allowing us to experience a fleeting sense of true joy, a sense of peace that does not come from the satisfaction of our desires. These experiences highlight the possibility of escaping the endless cycle of desire and disappointment, suggesting that true fulfillment might be found not in the chase, but in moments of connection, in moments of being present, or in moments of simply being. These are glimpses of an alternative way of being. They highlight that there is a path to liberation, and it is not through our ambitions, but through experiences that transcend the will. This suggests that true fulfillment does not lie in the relentless pursuit of external goals, but rather in the appreciation of these profound and meaningful moments, and in an understanding of ourselves. By detaching from our desires, we can reduce our suffering and approach life with a new mindset, one where the goal is not to chase an illusion, but to embrace the experience of life itself. This detachment does not mean giving up all ambition, but rather, it is about changing our relationship to it. It is about changing our perspective of how we interact with the world and how we understand our own will. By freeing ourselves from the need for external validation, we can find joy in the simple things and appreciate the present moment instead of constantly craving a future ideal. This approach is not about suppressing our desires, but rather, it's about understanding them, and by doing so, we can free ourselves from the cycle of wanting and disappointment. Think of the person who can enjoy the process, the journey, the being, without relying on the outcome for fulfillment. It is in this state that we see the true potential of this detachment, approaching our goals with less anxiety and more purpose, seeking to find value in each moment, and not only the desired end state. It is in this space that we are able to appreciate everything that we already have, and to approach our ambitions not as a need for completion, but as an opportunity for growth, and a way to express our talents and potential, not driven by the will, but guided by a different type of intention. This detachment sets the stage for us to see life through a new lens, and it opens the door to a more fulfilling experience. This leads us to what we can call realistic optimism, an approach that acknowledges the inherent suffering caused by the will, but suggests that we can approach our ambitions with more purpose and enjoyment instead of constantly being driven by a craving for fulfillment. It's about accepting that there will always be challenges, suffering, and uncertainty, but also recognizing the possibility for profound joy, meaning, and connection, balancing our understanding of human limitations with our potential for happiness. It is about not blindly chasing an idea, but accepting the paradox and the duality of life, seeing both the beauty and the suffering, embracing all aspects of reality. This new perspective allows us to approach our goals with more balance and more wisdom, focusing on the process and finding value in the journey and not solely in the final destination. It allows us to appreciate the moments of transcendence that offer a glimpse of the true potential of life, moments where the will recedes, and we find peace and joy, a more authentic expression of ourselves. It is in this new outlook that we begin to understand that we are not doomed to suffer forever, but that we can navigate our ambitions and the challenges of life with a renewed sense of purpose, with a more profound understanding of ourselves and our inherent nature. This is not about ignoring reality, but about embracing it and choosing a path of mindful living where we can find a sense of true fulfillment, not in the endless pursuit of desires, but in the acceptance of the present moment. So let's bring all of these ideas together. Why is it that smart and ambitious individuals often struggle with laziness? It's a paradox that has likely plagued you at some point, this internal conflict, this feeling of being your own worst enemy. Schopenhauer's concept of the will to live provides the answer. It's not that you are flawed or lack discipline. Rather, it's the relentless, insatiable nature of this underlying force that drives both your ambition and your resistance to action. Ambition, that yearning for achievement, is simply the will expressing its inherent need to constantly strive, to always seek something more, while laziness, that urge to procrastinate, is a form of resistance to the inevitable suffering that accompanies this endless pursuit. Both are manifestations of the same driving force, just expressed in different ways, as two sides of the same coin, showing how this internal conflict is not a personal failing, but simply the nature of our being. This understanding is crucial because it transforms the way we see ourselves, allowing us to approach our motivations with more clarity and more compassion. The pattern we have observed, of ambition leading to temporary satisfaction and ultimately to disappointment, is not a coincidence, but a fundamental characteristic of the will to live. This cycle, with its recurring theme of desire, pursuit, and the inevitable waning of fulfillment, serves as a powerful reminder that chasing external goals will not provide lasting contentment. Think of a hamster on a wheel, constantly running, expending energy, but always remaining in the same place. This is the essence of our existence, as dictated by the will, an endless loop where one pursuit is quickly replaced by another, creating an ongoing feeling that something is missing. Recognizing this pattern is key, because it shifts the focus from the external to the internal, allowing us to see our struggles not as personal failures, but as a reflection of a universal human experience. It is in this recognition that we can begin to find true acceptance and understanding, moving beyond the trap of endless chasing and start to approach our lives with more purpose and more intention. The key to understanding the paradox lies in recognizing that both ambition and laziness are not opposing forces, but rather different expressions of the same underlying force, the will to live. This will, as we've seen, is not a conscious choice, but a blind, insatiable drive that constantly pushes us forward towards goals that we believe will provide lasting satisfaction, while simultaneously making us resist the inherent suffering that accompanies this endless pursuit. Imagine a seesaw with ambition on one end and laziness on the other, constantly shifting, with each side fighting for dominance, but both originating from the same point, the same fulcrum, the will. This understanding is not meant to induce despair. Rather, it is an essential insight, because it reveals that our internal struggles are not unique, but a universal condition, a shared human experience, setting the stage for a new perspective where we are not self-condemning, but instead see our own behaviors with compassion. This awareness can transform our inner landscape, allowing us to see our motivations and actions with greater clarity, leading to a more compassionate understanding of ourselves. This understanding can also shift our perspective, enabling us to see our ambition and laziness not as personal shortcomings, but as part of our inherent nature, as a reflection of this fundamental, underlying drive that shapes all human action. This new perspective allows us to approach our inner experiences with more acceptance and with less self-judgment, transforming the way we see ourselves. The internal conflict we feel is not a sign that something is wrong with us. It is, instead, a testament to the complexity of our human nature, a reflection of the inherent tension between the drive to strive and the desire to avoid pain. Think of it like observing the weather. The storms are not personal attacks, but a natural occurrence, and seeing our inner conflicts with the same detachment can help us navigate them with more grace and understanding. This shift in perspective is not an intellectual exercise. It is a transformation in our relationship with ourselves, allowing us to move from self-criticism to self-compassion and from inner conflict to a sense of inner peace. When we zoom out and look at the broader context, we see that this individual experience of ambition and laziness is mirrored in societal patterns, like the constant pressure for achievement and success, which further reflects the influence of the will. Society often encourages the relentless pursuit of external validation, creating an environment where the cycle of desire and disappointment is continuously reinforced. Consider how much emphasis is placed on career advancement, financial success, and social status. It is as if we are all caught in a race, where the finish line is constantly moving, an unending quest for more, fueled by the same insatiable will that drives us individually. This societal pressure can intensify our internal conflict, making it more difficult to escape the trap of the will to live. Understanding these concepts is critical because it allows us to question these societal narratives and begin to identify what truly matters to us, rather than simply chasing the expectations of society, allowing us to strive for true fulfillment. Understanding the cycle of desire and disappointment is crucial for escaping the relentless demands of the will to live. By recognizing that our pursuits often lead to only temporary satisfaction, we can begin to question the value of constantly chasing after external goals, which will allow us to step back and look at the broader picture, seeing the pattern, and therefore being able to break free of it. Imagine being stuck in a maze, where each path leads back to the starting point. Recognizing this pattern allows us to start looking for a new way, a way out of the maze itself. This realization is not an invitation to give up on ambition, but a call to reevaluate our approach and to focus our energy on what truly brings us value and meaning, understanding that the cycle will always continue unless we start taking active steps to change its trajectory. It is in this conscious understanding that we can start to find more sustainable paths, ones that are not driven by the relentless, insatiable will. This knowledge provides a path towards a more meaningful and fulfilling life, suggesting that by understanding the will and its cycles, we can start to approach our desires in a more mindful way. Instead of being blindly driven by the relentless pursuit of fleeting pleasures, we can choose to focus on values that resonate with our authentic selves and find purpose in our daily experiences. This is a proactive way of being, moving away from a reactive mode and choosing a more intentional path. Think of it like navigating a river. Instead of being swept away by the current, we start to choose the direction, steering our lives with purpose and intention. This is not just an intellectual understanding, but a practical framework that allows us to live a life that is not solely driven by external validation, but one that is rooted in a deeper connection with ourselves and with the world around us. It is in this approach that we begin to find more genuine forms of satisfaction, ones that are less fleeting and more sustainable. Ultimately, understanding these concepts can transform our approach to our personal lives and our relationships with desire. It gives us a lens through which we can observe our behavior, make conscious choices, and approach life with more clarity and less anxiety, knowing that the internal conflict between ambition and laziness is not a personal failing, but a consequence of the will to live. Consider how this understanding changes our perspective on our careers, our relationships, and our goals, allowing us to approach them with less pressure and more mindfulness. This is not about rejecting ambition, it's about reframing it, understanding that true fulfillment lies not only in achieving goals, but in enjoying the journey itself, appreciating the experiences and valuing the process, and understanding ourselves more deeply along the way. It is in this understanding that we can break free from the relentless pursuit of fleeting pleasures and start building a life of true, lasting fulfillment. By acknowledging the inherent suffering caused by the will, we can start to find freedom from this continuous cycle of desire and disappointment, accepting that life is not about endlessly chasing external goals, but about finding a sense of peace, purpose, and meaning within. This understanding is not an end in itself, but a starting point, a new foundation from which we can approach our lives and our ambitions. Consider a mountain climber who acknowledges the challenges and risks of the climb, but is still driven to reach the summit, not for the sake of the summit itself, but for the experience of the journey and all the lessons learned along the way. Similarly, by accepting the reality of suffering and not seeing it as an obstacle, we can approach life with more resilience and with a greater sense of gratitude, and understanding that it is part of the overall human experience. It is in this acceptance that we begin to move beyond the relentless demands of the will and find a more sustainable path to true happiness. To break free from this cycle, we must introduce practical methods of detachment, focusing on embracing moments of transcendence. This is not an abstract ideal, but a practical way to counteract the influence of the will and start experiencing a more genuine sense of satisfaction. By focusing on experiences that transcend our everyday desires, we create space for a different form of fulfillment, one that is not rooted in external validation, but in the appreciation of our inner experiences and the beauty that is present all around us. Think of the profound sense of peace that comes from losing yourself in a beautiful landscape, or the deep connection that comes from an act of selfless kindness. These are moments when we escape the will, at least temporarily, which allows us to find genuine satisfaction. Practices such as meditation, aesthetic contemplation, and selfless acts of kindness are all ways in which we can break free of the relentless pursuit of our desires and find deeper meaning, not by chasing an ideal, but by simply being, and by connecting with something larger than ourselves. So let's return to the initial question: why are smart and ambitious people often lazy? As we've explored, it's not due to a lack of ability or discipline, but it is a direct consequence of the will to live and the inherent suffering it creates. Ambition is simply the will expressing itself, and laziness is a form of resistance to the pain and disappointment that often accompanies that relentless pursuit. This is not a personal failing, but a universal human experience. It is in fact a testament to the nature of our existence, according to Schopenhauer. By understanding this, we can transform our perspective on our own behaviors and approach our inner experience with compassion. It's important to understand that the internal conflict is not because you are lacking, but because you are part of a universal struggle, and therefore you are not alone in this internal battle. It is in this profound recognition that we can find true peace and start the path to change, not by chasing an illusion, but by embracing the truth of our human condition and working with it. While suffering is unavoidable, we do have a choice in how we respond to it. By acknowledging the influence of the will to live, we are not condemned to endlessly chase our desires, but rather, we can consciously choose a different approach, a path that is not solely driven by the endless pursuit of external validation, and can instead focus on finding fulfillment in a more mindful way. This is not about rejecting the world, it's about engaging with it more intentionally and with more understanding. Think of an artist who uses their suffering as inspiration, transforming pain into beauty. Similarly, we can acknowledge our challenges, but not let them define our entire existence, choosing instead to embrace a way of living that is both meaningful and more purposeful. By understanding this, you can choose to approach the future with renewed intention and less anxiety, and live a life that is not just driven by the will, but is also guided by a deeper sense of purpose. Now, consider these new questions. How does this understanding change the way you approach your own desires and motivations? How can you use this knowledge to create a more fulfilling life? These are not simply intellectual questions, but active prompts for self-reflection and starting points for personal growth. This understanding should not end with this video, but continue to evolve and expand as you integrate it into your daily experiences. Think of this as a new map that guides you in a new direction, and now it is up to you to explore this territory. What will you discover? What will you transform? The journey is just beginning, and it is up to you to continue exploring the possibilities. This is only the beginning, a foundation that you can build upon as you actively integrate these ideas into your life, observing your behaviors and reactions, and exploring the new perspective that this information has offered. The goal is not perfection, but progress and the active application of these principles. Observe your own internal conflicts and note how these new insights shift your perspective and actively question the motivations that drive you. This is an invitation to actively participate in your own transformation, using this knowledge as a guide and as a way to better understand your own human experience. This is a journey that you must take, and the more actively you engage with the concepts presented, the more you will gain from it. If you found these ideas valuable, please consider subscribing and sharing this video with others. And if you are willing, please start a conversation in the comment section. Your insights and questions are very important to building a community of people that are interested in exploring these ideas and in helping each other in this journey of self-understanding and growth. We are all in this together, and by sharing our experiences, we can learn from each other and support each other as we navigate the inherent challenges of life. Your voice matters, and together we can create a space where we can grow and learn from one another. Ultimately, we hope that these ideas have inspired you to see life with a new perspective, to not be defined by your internal struggles, but to learn from them and to move towards self-awareness by embracing a life guided by purpose and mindful intention. This is a path that we all can choose, a path where we are not condemned to endlessly chase our desires, but where we can embrace life's journey with more understanding and compassion, and where we are not driven by our limitations, but by our true potential. This is a journey that continues, and you are the protagonist, so keep exploring, keep growing, and keep seeking a more authentic and fulfilling life. Thanks for looking.